Hello and welcome to Level 1 Session 4, and we have one of these type of sessions in every single level, and these are all about formulas. Now formulas are at the heart of what makes Excel different to PowerPoint and different to Word. But what are formulas? Formulas are calculations, and as you'll see later on, they can be based on other cells. So for instance, we might have a cell here, which is based on a figure here. So how do we enter a formula? What is it that makes a formula unique to a text or date or number? Well, I indicated this a few videos ago. To enter a formula, you need to start with one of two things: the equal sign or the plus sign. Now they're both the same. I recommend using the equal sign. The reason for this is the sign which is native to Microsoft Excel and is the one that most people use. There was another spreadsheet program way back when called Lotus 123, and in that you started doing formulas using the plus sign, and it's really an old system. I don't recommend you do this. I recommend sticking to convention, starting with the equal sign that most people recognize. So we've got the start of a formula. What can we do next? Well, let's start with some really simple formulas. And I can't think anything more easy than 1 plus 1. So equals 1 plus 1. Okay, nothing's happened. Now I've got to press the enter or the return key. Notice what happens? You get the answer 2, just like a calculator. But unlike a calculator, look what happens when I go back to this cell. We get the result in the sheet, 2, but in the formula bar up above, we have the formula equals 1 plus 1. So let's choose another formula. Equals 2 multiplied by 3. The multiply sign on my keyboard is Shift and 8. Notice it's not 2x3. So we have to use times. 2 times 3. And 2 times 3 is 6. We also have division equals 12 divided by, so you can see this is a slash going from bottom left to top right, 4. And subtraction equals 4 minus 9. So these are examples of addition, multiplication, division, subtraction. But there's more. Suppose you wanted to do squares and square roots and that sort of thing. Well, suppose you want to do a square, say 8 squared, that is 8 multiplied by itself. Now, if you did this at mathematics at high school, you may remember putting in a very small 2 up at the top. So 8 with a very small 2. Well, I can't see a very small 2 on my keyboard. So instead, equals 8, and I use a caret. So that is Shift and 6, and you can see this little symbol that looks like a small up arrow and then a 2. So it's like saying put the next thing right at the top. So equals 8 to the power of 2. So 8 times 8 is 64, and similarly 8 to the power of 3 is 512. That's 8 times 8 times 8. And 8 to the power of a half. Now I'm going to write this as 0.5. You might need to write it as 0.5 depending on where you are in the world. I'll come to that later. So equals 8 to the power of 0.5. So this is the equivalent of a square root. So the square root of 8, 2.82. And that's really it for the basic operators. Now suppose you wanted to modify an existing formula. Well, you can go into the formula bar. So click on a cell, click inside the formula bar at the top, and we change this from equals 12 divided by 4 to equals 12 divided by 6. And that's fine. Just press the enter at the end or the return and you're done. Now what happens if you wanted to put in some text starting with the equals or the plus sign? And incidentally, you could also use the minus sign. So minus 5 minus 7, for instance, is minus 12. But if you wanted to put in some text starting with the equals, plus or minus sign, the quickest way is not actually to start with an equal or plus or minus sign. Sounds a bit obvious, but you're saying, actually, I do want to start with that symbol. Well, instead, start with an apostrophe. If you type it right at the beginning of a cell, it is non-printing. It gets hidden. So it's still there in the formula bar, but now I can type, I've typed in the apostrophe, so equals, this is my answer. So you can see the apostrophe gets hidden. It's still there in the formula bar, but it's not there in the result. Now these are formulas. This is your introduction. It gets a lot more complicated, but this is how we're starting off.